Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're tackling a source that's, well, let's just say it's incredibly controversial.
Monumentally so.
Right, it's presented not just as fiction, but almost like a historical record, a blueprint for a radical revolutionary movement.
That's the frame, yes, the Turner Diaries.
And our goal here is very specific. We're setting aside the ideology, the politics, all of that.
Completely.
We're treating this strictly as an analytical text.
Yeah.
Like, how would an extremist insurgency actually work based on this document? The internal mechanics, the structure, the strategy.
Exactly. We're dissecting the operational details, the logistics, the planning that's laid out by the author, Andrew McDonald, through the diary of Earl Turner.
It's about extracting the how, regardless of the why. Command structure, communications, psychological warfare, the nuts and bolts of overthrowing a government as described here.
Precisely. It's an exercise in understanding the mechanics of insurgency through this specific, albeit fictional and deeply disturbing lens.
And the text itself, well, the foreword makes a big claim about its value.
It does. It pitches it as this unique, continuous day-to-day record.
Like a ground-level view from someone actually in it.
Exactly. A rank-and-file member's perspective on the real thoughts, feelings, the struggle, the sacrifice involved in what it calls the Great Revolution.
Okay, before we get into the actual conflict, who is this Earl Turner?
Yeah.
The guy writing the diary.
Right. Context is important. He's presented as an electrical engineer, born 43 BNE, which means before New Era in the book's timeline.
So he's part of the generation that saw the system rise.
Correct. He settles near Washington, D.C. and gets involved with the organization around 12 BNE, when the diary starts in 1991, or 8 BNE.
Which makes him about
35. Unmarried, already deeply involved, ideologically speaking, but maybe still on the edges operationally at that exact moment.
But that changes instantly. The diary opens and boom, it's war.
Instantly. It starts in media res. The very first lines are, "Today it finally began. After all these years of talking and nothing but talking, we have finally taken our first action. We are at war with the system, and it is no longer a war of words."
Wow. So no easing into it. It's an immediate jump from talk to action.
A definitive leap from covert organizing straight into overt kinetic conflict. Huge increase in risk, commitment, everything.
Okay, let's unpack this blueprint then. Starting with the event that supposedly forced their hand, the big catalyst. Every revolution seems to need that trigger, right? That one government action that pushes things over the edge.
Yeah.
What was it here?
According to the text, the pivotal date was November 9, 1989.
Okay.
That's when the government enacted the Cohen Act.
Which did what?
It outlawed all private ownership of firearms nationwide. And it wasn't just a law passed on paper.
Well,
it was immediately followed by these massive, simultaneous, nationwide gun raids.
So forced confiscation, basically. Given the group's ideology, you'd expect that to spark that immediate popular uprising they wanted.
You would think so, but it didn't. And realizing that was a massive strategic shock for the organization.
People didn't resist.
Well, many did, just not in the way the organization predicted. A lot of people apparently just complied quietly, but enough people didn't comply that the government's whole operation kind of ground to a halt.
How many didn't comply?
Turner estimates the raids resulted in over 800,000 arrests because people either refused outright or hid their weapons.
800,000 arrests.
Yes.
In one go. That sounds like chaos for the government.
Absolute chaos. Logistically, it was a disaster for the system. They didn't have the jail space, the resources.
So what happened to all those people?
Most were held temporarily, in makeshift places like school gyms, fed poorly, then released within about a week, just mug-shotted and data collected.
But it wasn't just logistics, right? The text mentions the system bungled it politically.
Oh, massively. It exposed incompetence and what the organization saw as hypocrisy. The lists they used for the raids.
Where did they get the lists?
Mostly official firearms sales records. If you bought a gun and didn't turn it in, you were flagged.
Seems straightforward, if invasive.
But politically disastrous. The system apparently tried to spin it, saying they were targeting right-wing extremists, so they largely skipped raiding black neighborhoods.
Which would just fuel the organization's narrative.
Exactly. And worse, the lists were so crude, based just on purchase history, that they ended up arresting several prominent anti-gun columnists.
Seriously?
Yeah, and 4 black congressmen who lived in predominantly white areas, plus a whole bunch of government officials who just hadn't turned in, like old hunting rifles or inherited pieces.
What a PR nightmare for the government.
Completely undercut their message, made the raids look incompetent and politically motivated, not like a targeted strike.
So the public didn't rise up as expected, and the government looked clumsy. How did this affect the organization internally? Must have caused some serious arguments.
Oh, it created immediate, deep divisions. The raids basically sorted the members into 3 camps.
Okay, what were they?
First, the dropouts. People who just got scared and vanished, cut all ties. The risk was suddenly very real.
Understandable.
Second, the inactive, or as Turner calls them, the whisperers. They stayed in, technically, but argued they should only do safe things.
Like what? Just complaining?
Pretty much. Meet secretly, talk about how bad things were, but take no real action. Avoid any confrontation.
And the third group, Turner's faction.
The militants. They were the opposite. They wanted immediate action. Dig up the hidden weapons. Start a terror campaign now.
Executions, bombings.
Exactly. Judges, editors, politicians. Turner was fully in this camp initially. He thought the system showing its teeth like that meant the public had to be ready for revolution.
But they weren't. The mass uprising didn't happen. That must have forced a major rethink.
A fundamental one. Turner writes about how naive they were. They assumed people inherently value freedom and would fight back against tyranny. But they hadn't factored in, as he puts it, how corrupted people were by materialism and how effectively they were manipulated by the mass media.
The TV and funny papers, as he calls them.
Right. The media apparently framed the raids as targeting only racists and extremists, and most people just went back to their lives, their jobs, their stuff.
So the big realization was,
Yeah.
what? They couldn't rely on public support.
They realized they had to create the conditions for revolt. Stop waiting for people to get angry enough about tyranny and start making their comfortable lives impossible.
Which leads to this really interesting, kind of counterintuitive idea in the diaries about what actually causes governments to fall.
Yeah, this is a key strategic pivot point. Turner's insight, as written, is this. It is corruption, not tyranny, which leads to the overthrow of governments.
Explain that. It sounds backwards.
He argues that a strong, efficient, even brutally oppressive government can crush a revolution because it works. It enforces its will effectively.
Okay.
But a government that's corrupt, inefficient, decadent, that's the one that's vulnerable.
Why is corruption more helpful to an insurgency than just plain tyranny?
Because decadence and corruption create gaps, weak points, opportunities. If the system was ruthlessly efficient and honest,
Then the underground couldn't function.
exactly. Every checkpoint would be strict, every permit process unbreakable, but widespread graft, from the top down to local officials, that creates space.
How so?
Local officials take bribes to look the other way, to falsify papers, to get you things like black market gasoline. Turner mentions it costing $10 a gallon. Clerks can be paid off.
So the system's own decay allows the organization to operate.
Precisely. It turns the country into, in Turner's words, a banana republic. And that inefficiency, that corruption, becomes the organization's shield. It's how they move, how they get supplies, how they survive underground. They weaponize the rot.
Okay, so they figure out they can exploit the system's corruption. But practically, right then, they needed basics. Food, gas, weapons, reality bites.
Immediately. The philosophy is great, but survival comes first. Turner's unit runs out of food and gas almost instantly.
Which forces the crime issue.
Right. They have to get money somehow. Turner, being the practical engineer type, apparently suggested just robbing a liquor store. Quick cash, minimal force.
Makes sense from a purely practical standpoint. But Henry resisted that.
Strongly. Henry is presented as the more ideological figure in this early part. He argued they absolutely could not prey on the general public.
Why not? Desperate times.
His point was about identity. If they start acting like common criminals, they lose their moral high ground, even in their own eyes. They just become criminals, betraying their own revolutionary purpose.
So a compromise.
Yeah. They decide they have to take some money, but selectively. Only from the system or from designated enemies. No hitting ordinary people.
All right, money sorted maybe. What about weapons? They had caches hidden? Right. Retrieving those wasn't exactly easy, based on the description.
No, it sounds absolutely grueling. It really shows the unglamorous reality of starting an insurgency. Turner and Henry drive to Pennsylvania near Belafonte. They planned to use a logging road, but it was blocked, so they had to hike 2 miles in and 2 miles out.
Carrying.
About 300 pounds of munitions, stored in a 50-gallon chemical drum.
Okay.
Coated in asphalt to waterproof it, and buried 5 feet deep in clay. It had settled so hard they couldn't just lift it out.
Oh, wow. So they had to dig down around it?
And then open it while it was still mostly in the hole. Turner describes Henry holding his legs while he's practically headfirst in this damp hole, trying to pry the rusty lid off.
Sounds miserable.
And then carrying 300 pounds of stuff out 2 miles without proper packs. Just awkward mail sacks. 3 trips each. Painful, exhausting work.
Definitely not the Hollywood version of guerrilla warfare.
Not at all. But it contrasts sharply with what comes later. Their ability to acquire supplies scales up dramatically.
Right, the Aberdeen Proving Ground raid? That sounds like a major leap.
Huge leap. Moving from digging up a 300-pound drum to hitting a major military base, they apparently got help from an insider.
An inside man.
Seems so. Infiltrated, then shot their way out with a 2.5-ton truck packed with ordnance.
What kind of ordnance?
Military-grade stuff. 30 cases of fragmentation grenades, that's 750 total. 100 landmines. Detonating cord, fuses, boosters, thermite grenades.
Serious explosives.
And the big one, a 500-pound general-purpose bomb filled with tritonol. That acquisition alone instantly changes their capability. They're not just a cell anymore. They can cause massive damage.
Okay, they have weapons. Now, communication. This seems like Turner's area of expertise, being an engineer. How did they talk to each other securely? Phones were obviously out.
Completely monitored, yeah. Turner designed a pretty clever hybrid system. For anything really complex or sensitive, they used human couriers, slow but secure.
And for faster, scattered messages.
A specialized radio network. The key was something called the message dictionary.
Okay, what's that?
A list of almost 800 predefined operational messages, each assigned a 3-digit number. Like 415 might mean attack confirmed, 212 might mean need supplies, whatever.
It seems simple enough, but how do they keep the system from just cracking the code? If they intercept the number 415, they know an attack is confirmed.
But the numerical assignments weren't fixed. They randomly shifted the entire code sequence every few days.
Ow. Wouldn't communicating the new code be risky?
That's the elegant part. They only needed to securely communicate the new number for one single message.
Just one?
Yeah. Say they transmit securely, message 415 is now 729. Everyone in the network who gets that knows the offset. They can then decode the entire dictionary relative to that one known shift.
Okay, that's clever. Makes intercepting random number strings useless without that key.
Exactly. And the physical transmission itself was designed for security, too.
How so?
The radio bursts never lasted more than 1 second.
1 second, why?
Makes it incredibly difficult for the political police, the system's forces, to get a directional fix. They can't triangulate the transmitter's location before it goes silent.
And the gear itself?
Simple. Dispersed. Receivers were apparently a mix of modified pocket radios and calculators. They'd display the 3-digit number if they picked up the right coded pulse.
And this system grew.
Rapidly. At one point, Washington Field Command asks Turner to build 30 new transmitters and 100 new receivers. Shows how vital it became.
Moving from tech security to personal security. Disguises are mentioned. Catherine's skill with makeup and wigs.
Yeah, useful for quick things like a robbery, temporary changes to appearance, voice even. Henry apparently shaved his long-standing beard and mustache for a radical change.
But that kind of disguise is only temporary. The bigger threat was systematic tracking, right? The internal passport system.
That was the looming existential threat. Informants warned them the system was going all in on a computerized, universal internal passport.
Something that civil liberties groups had stopped before.
According to the text, yes. But the organization's own actions, the bombings and attacks, gave the system the political cover it needed. Fighting terrorism became the excuse to implement total surveillance.
And how would this passport system actually work? How would it track people?
Pervasively. Every ticket counter, motel, doctor's office, eventually even grocery stores would have readers linked to a national databank. Your passport has a magnetic code.
So every transaction is logged.
Every single one. Where you are, what you buy, where you stay. Any irregularity, a fake name, a transaction that doesn't fit your pattern, using an invalid code would instantly flag an alert at the nearest police station, pinpointing your exact location.
That sounds almost impossible to beat. How could an underground operative function? Standard forgeries would be useless.
Completely useless against a real-time computer check. So the organization realized they needed something else.
What?
They needed genuine credentials, real documents linked to real, valid entries in the system's database.
How on earth did they get those?
The text is a bit vague, refers to them being obtained through unpleasant stories.
Which implies coercion, blackmail, deep infiltration.
Probably all of the above. It suggests they had to compromise or coerce people within the system, clerks, administrators, maybe higher, to generate these real IDs.
So they're using the system's own corruption again, even against its high-tech surveillance.
It seems so. Weaponizing the human element, the potential for graft, against the digital control grid. It's the only way they can maintain their legals members living seemingly normal lives.
Okay, so they've got some logistics, comms, and counter-surveillance work out. Now they move to major offensive actions. The FBI headquarters bombing sounds like the first big one.
It was huge, and importantly, it wasn't just symbolic terror. It had a specific operational goal.
Which was?
To destroy that new $3 billion computer complex being built for the internal passport system. Revolutionary Command saw that system as an existential threat to their operatives. Taking it out was priority number one.
Protecting their legals. Makes sense. Turner details the bomb itself.
He does. Pretty simple, actually. 4 pounds of blasting gelatin in an applesauce can.
An applesauce can.
Yeah. Initiated by a homemade lead-azide detonator, wired to a 10-minute timer. Low-tech delivery for a high-tech target.
And the execution.
Henry drove a truck with the bomb into the FBI building's freight receiving area, apparently just waved in by a guard.
Security wasn't tight.
Turner notes the guard was black and seemed casual about it, which plays into the text's racial themes, but operationally, it highlights a vulnerability they exploited. Henry flips the timer, walks away.
And the explosion.
Devastating. It went off in the central courtyard, caused catastrophic damage to one wing of the building.
What about the computers, the main target?
The text emphasizes the destruction of data. Thousands of file cabinets blown open, creating this waist-deep sea of paper. Critical intelligence, gone. Around 700 people killed, including 150 in the sub-basement levels where parts of the computer system might have been.
And Henry didn't just leave after setting the timer.
No, he apparently circled back briefly, saw the chaos, the piles of paper everywhere, took out a cigarette lighter and set the paper on fire, ensuring the records, the data were completely destroyed. That wasn't part of the plan, apparently, just field initiative.
Plus the propaganda element.
He called the Post.
That's right.
Like,
Right before the blast, yeah. Claimed responsibility, invoked the name Carl Hodges, and declared, "White America shall live," making the message clear.
a major strategic success for them. But then they immediately go after the media, the Washington Post, and that doesn't go well initially.
No, that first attempt was described by Turner as a failure. It seems like it was rushed, maybe driven by anger over critical editorials rather than cold strategy.
No, they do.
They raided the press room, didn't use fragmentation grenades for some reason. Instead, they rigged up an anti-tank mine taped to a hand grenade.
Sounds crude.
And threw thermite grenades. The result: mostly just smoke damage, one press slightly damaged, minimal impact on the newspaper's operations.
And the lesson learned from that, this seems important for their development. Huge lesson. Turner concludes the risk they took. Sending in operatives, using valuable munitions, was way out of proportion to the results.
So stop hitting targets just to hit them.
Exactly. No more missions simply for the sake of striking. Every operation had to be carefully calculated for its effect. A shift from reactive anger to strategic calculation.
And we see that calculation almost immediately in their next move against the Post, which was very different.
Very different. Targeted, personal, low risk. A few days later, Turner and Henry go after the editorial page editor directly, the one who wrote the scathing editorial against them.
How'd they do it?
Meticulously planned, they stole a taxi for cover. First, they killed the black driver and put his body in the trunk.
Part of the operational necessity, and also sending a racial message, presumably.
Seems likely, given the context. Then they drove to the editor's house, and Henry ambushed him on his doorstep with a shotgun.
Brutal, but effective from their perspective.
Low risk, high impact, psychologically. Sent a chilling message. Criticize us, and we can reach you anywhere, personally. No institution can protect you.
This calculated approach leads to the next big escalation.
Yeah.
The mortar attack on the Capitol, November 9th, 1991. 2 years after the gun raids.
Right. This showcased new capabilities and a real focus on psychological impact. They used 81mm mortars.
Which Turner liked.
Called it a marvelous little weapon for guerrilla warfare because it bypasses conventional security.
How so?
Mortars fire high-arc trajectories. The rounds come down almost vertically, silently from a distance. They set up 2 miles away, across the Potomac River, hidden in woods.
So all the ground-level security around the Capitol?
Irrelevant.
Completely useless. Turner mentions thousands of soldiers and secret police, but the rounds just dropped in from above.
And the timing was key, hitting during a live presidential address.
Maximum psychological effect.
Yeah.
Live TV cameras captured the explosions, rounds landing near machine gun nests hitting the roof. Turner calls them beautiful blossoms of flame and steel.
Casualties. 61 people, including 2 congressmen, according to the text. But the real value wasn't the body count.
It was the message.
Exactly. And to amplify that message, it wasn't an isolated incident.
Right, there were simultaneous attacks.
Showcasing nationwide coordination. A grenade attack on the LA City Council killed 8 members, and a bazooka strike on an airliner leaving New York for Tel Aviv.
An airliner, wow.
Reportedly carrying vacationing dignitaries, mostly Jews, establishing them as a threat capable of sophisticated, coordinated attacks across the country.
So the big takeaway for the systems leaders from this mortar campaign.
Turner spells it out. They learned this afternoon that not one of them is beyond our reach. All the armed guards and bulletproof limousines in America cannot guarantee their safety. Pure psychological warfare, making the powerful feel vulnerable.
So these spectacular attacks grab headlines, but the text suggests they weren't actually winning the war. By mid-1992, they realized they're losing ground.
Yeah, the attrition rate was too high. They were losing more experienced members than they could recruit. Revolutionary Command, the leadership, had to face a hard truth.
Which was?
Their initial strategy, the propaganda of the deed, the idea that dramatic acts of violence would inspire the masses, it failed.
Why? Why didn't it work, according to Henry's analysis in the book?
Because, as Henry apparently argued, the average white American valued their paycheck and their comfort more than abstract ideas like freedom or honor.
Ouch. That's a cynical view.
Deeply cynical, but it's the conclusion the text presents. Tyranny wasn't unpopular enough as long as life was relatively easy and materially secure. People weren't willing to risk their comfort.
So the organization had to change tactics drastically. If they couldn't inspire people, they had to.
What?
Coerce them.
Essentially, yes, it's a major strategic pivot. They realized they couldn't afford the high-risk attacks anymore. Their core combat strength was down to maybe 400 fighters nationwide.
400, that's tiny.
Very small. So they shifted from targeting people or symbols to targeting the economy.
How? What kind of targets?
Tower stations, fuel depots, transportation infrastructure like bridges and ports, food supplies, key industrial plants, things that keep society running smoothly.
And the goal wasn't just disruption, it was psychological again.
It was about breaking the public's complacency, causing localized breakdowns, making daily life difficult, uncomfortable, unreliable.
Forcing people off the fence.
Exactly. Making them realize they couldn't just sit the war out comfortably. They had to make the status quo unbearable.
The Houston attacks in September '92 sound like the first big example of this economic warfare strategy.
A brutal example, 14 major bombings over 2 days, designed for maximum economic paralysis.
What was the key target?
The absolute linchpin was detonating a munitions ship in the Houston Ship Channel. It was apparently carrying bombs destined for Israel.
What did that do?
The explosions sank other ships, started a huge refinery fire, and completely blocked the channel. Shut down the nation's second busiest port for over 4 months. Crippling.
And they hit other infrastructure too.
Simultaneously. The airport, the main power station, key bridges, and highway overpasses. Total shutdown.
What was the effect on the city?
Catastrophic. Hundreds of thousands without power for 2 weeks. Food spoiled everywhere.
Leading to?
Food riots, which then required federal troops to intervene. Troops shooting civilians, 26 people, at a government food depot, according to the text.
And the organization poured fuel on that fire.
Oh, yeah. They didn't just cause the chaos, they manipulated it. They spread rumors that the emergency government rations were contaminated with botulism.
Just to keep the panic going.
Maximize fear, sow distrust in the system, make the situation even worse. Pure psychological amplification of the economic damage.
This strategy escalates further with the Evanston Project. Hitting a nuclear power plant, that's a whole other level.
It combines the economic attack with profound psychological fear. The Evanston plant was huge, 4 reactors on Lake Michigan, powering much of the Midwest, which was already facing energy shortages.
Taking it out would be a massive blow.
Yeah.
But nuclear plants are hardened targets, right?
Yeah.
Conventional explosives wouldn't work easily.
Right, which led Turner to devise the initial plan, which was, frankly, horrifying.
The suicide mission.
Yes. Because they couldn't breach the containment conventionally, the plan was to use a highly radioactive material, a radionuclide with about a year-long half-life.
How would they deliver it?
Packed into a shielded cane or crutch, An operative would walk in, use a small explosive charge to disperse the material inside the facility.
But the shielding.
Couldn't be made practically portable enough to protect the carrier, so it was a mandatory suicide mission. Shows the level of desperation or commitment at that point.
But RC, the leadership, overruled that.
Thankfully, yes. They decided martyrdom wasn't efficient. They authorized using mortars instead.
Mortars again. How would that work with radioactive material?
They modified 3 4.2-inch white phosphorus mortar rounds, replaced the WP payload with the radioactive contaminant.
Advantages.
Much better. Sure delivery, 10 times the amount of contaminant, better dispersal over the target area, and crucially, the rounds could be shielded right up until firing. So, not a suicide mission.
And the raid was successful.
A complete success, according to Turner, caused huge economic disruption across the Midwest.
But the real impact was the fear.
Absolutely. Turner explicitly notes the public's almost superstitious fear of radiation. This attack, more than any bombing, terrified people, made them feel the system couldn't protect them from these invisible, insidious threats, drove more people off the fence, as the saying goes in the book.
Okay, so economic warfare creates chaos. Then comes the July 4th offensive in 1993. The organization actually takes territory, Vandenberg Air Force Base.
Yes, a major turning point. They gain control of Vandenberg and, critically, its nuclear missile silos. They now possess nuclear weapons.
But even with nukes, RC realizes they can't win a straight-up conventional fight against the whole U.S. military.
Exactly, that's the grim calculus. Taking territory is one thing. Holding it against a determined counterattack is another. They knew the system could still crush them conventionally if it really committed.
So the nukes become deterrents.
Their only real strategic advantage. The threat of a nuclear reprisal is the only thing potentially stopping a full-scale invasion of their liberated zone in California.
And they get intel that the system is planning exactly that, a conventional attack on Vandenberg.
Yes, crucial intelligence. The system was apparently planning a surprise conventional first strike, just waiting for an emergency military reorganization to ensure troop loyalty before launching.
Which forces the organization's hand into the ultimate gamble.
The nuclear ultimatum. August 1993. This is where the narrative goes full global nuclear blackmail.
How did they start it?
With a demonstration. 2 nuclear bombs detonated without warning.
Where?
One hit Miami Beach. Estimated 60,000 killed instantly. The second hit near Charleston, South Carolina, allegedly targeting an area where wealthy Jewish evacuees were staying.
Just horrific. And then the ultimatum.
Delivered immediately after. Demanding 2 things. Stop the military buildup against California and abandon all plans for a nuclear strike on Vandenberg. Or else they detonate another nuclear device every 12 hours. And they claim to have over 500 warheads hidden across the country.
500. Is that credible in the story?
The number itself might be bluff, but the threat was credible because they had demonstrated the capability. They specifically mentioned having over 40 hidden just in the New York City area, and threatened immediate nuclear strikes on Tel Aviv if attacked.
How did the system react to nuclear terrorism on this scale?
It worked, operationally speaking. It fractured the enemy leadership, exactly what they intended.
How so?
The system apparently split into 2 camps. A Jewish faction, as the book calls it, demanding immediate nuclear retaliation against California, regardless of the 500 hidden bombs.
And the other faction?
A military faction, arguing for a temporary truce. Let's find those hidden bombs first before we trigger Armageddon. This internal conflict paralyzed the system.
Bought the organization time.
Critical time to consolidate. And Turner's final big mission was part of securing that deterrence. Deploying the insurance.
The hidden bombs.
Yes. He leads a team on this incredibly dangerous journey, 3,500 miles across enemy territory.
To do what?
To conceal 4 60-kiloton warheads around Washington, D.C.
Strategic target.
Highly strategic. Fort Belvoir military base. Somewhere in the District of Columbia itself, aimed at government agencies and the black population. And Silver Spring, Maryland, described as the center of the suburban Jewish community. Mutual assured destruction, basically.
And then November 9th, 1993, the 3rd anniversary of the gun raids, Turner gets his final assignment.
Right. He learns the system's invasion is finally imminent, despite the paralysis. His probationary status in the order is cut short. He's given a suicide mission.
As part of their initiation right, the right of union.
Exactly. It's framed as his ultimate test and sacrifice. His target. The Pentagon.
The military nerve center. How is he supposed to deliver the bomb?
He had one last warhead, one he hadn't managed to place during the D.C. deployment. He was to fly an old Stearman crop duster,
A crop duster.
Yeah, apparently painted for low visibility. Fly it at just 50 feet altitude straight into the Pentagon building 8 miles away. The 60-kiloton warhead was rigged to detonate on impact, or he could trigger it manually. A low-level airburst over the target.
His odds.
He writes his chances are excellent, and chillingly justifies this by noting that 2/3 of the perimeter guards are niggers, implying they'd be less vigilant or competent. Again, the text's pervasive racism tied into operational details.
And the epilogue confirms this suicide mission worked.
It confirms it was successful, celebrated later as the Day of the Martyrs. Destroying the Pentagon paralyzed the system's military command structure at the critical moment.
Halting the invasion.
Exactly. Orders start flowing to the troops massed outside California. Confusion, plummeting morale, desertions. The military threat just dissolved. The liberated zone was secured.
So the external threat is gone. Nuclear blackmail worked. Now the organization has to actually govern its territory in California. The focus shifts inward to control and, well, radical social engineering.
Immediately. And brutally. The pacification process, as described, is swift and savage. It starts with public executions.
The hangings. July 25th.
Yes, targeting specific groups labeled white race criminals. Politicians, media figures, lawyers, businessmen, teachers involved with the old system, hanged in the streets wearing signs, "I betrayed my race."
Establishing dominance and ideology instantly.
And it extended beyond political enemies. White women who were married to or living with non-whites were also hanged publicly. Their signs read, "I defiled my race," setting extreme racial boundaries immediately.
And what about the non-white population itself within their zone?
Systematic demographic warfare. 2 main approaches described. First, mass evacuation and expulsion. Black and Chicano populations were rounded up and forcibly convoyed east out of the liberated zone.
Why east?
The stated purpose was twofold. Overload the remaining system's economy and social services in the border areas and increase racial tensions there, further destabilizing the enemy.
And the second approach, for those not expelled.
Focused liquidation, particularly of mixed-race people. Those described as light-skinned mongrels were apparently separated and marched into a canyon for mass execution. Ethnic cleansing on a horrific scale.
With the zone purified, in their view, they needed to restore basic functions like food production. How do they manage the remaining white population?
Mass mobilization. Over 600,000 white workers, about a quarter of the productive population in the area, were conscripted into labor brigades.
Just for work.
Work, yes, but also control and indoctrination. Young people, 12 to 18, were put in food brigades for farm labor. All workers had mandatory ideological lectures 10 hours a week.
And they were segregated.
By performance and attitude, high performers formed leader-trainee work groups. This became a screening process, identifying potential recruits for the organization itself and ultimately for its inner core.
The order. This secret structure within the organization.
Yes. The source from which future leaders would emerge, kept secret from most members until the war was essentially won. Membership was highly selective.
Based on what?
2 tests. The test of the word, proving the correct ideological attitude, and the test of the deed, having proven commitment through actions during the struggle.
How did they test the word? How could they be sure of someone's internal beliefs?
Through drug-assisted interrogation. They used a clinical psychologist, a Dr. Clark, who administered drugs and used electrodes to bypass deception and gauge true beliefs.
And if someone failed? Or was suspected of being a spy?
Turner is stark about it. He never wakes up from his little nap afterward.
Clinical execution.
Effective counterintelligence, presumably.
Extremely effective, according to the text. Caught over 30 infiltrators this way. The system apparently never figured out why its spies in the organization just kept disappearing.
And once you passed these tests and got into the order,
You swore a mighty oath, and you received a gold chain pendant.
a tiny glass capsule of fast-acting, painless poison.
To be used if captured.
Mandatory. To protect the order's secrets at all costs. No member should be taken alive for interrogation. As Turner puts it after his own initiation, now our lives truly belong only to the order. Absolute commitment. Hashtag tag outro.
So we've traced this narrative's path from those first desperate acts of terror, building secure comms, the necessary shift to crippling economic warfare, the terrifying leap to nuclear blackmail, and finally, the brutal consolidation of power and social reengineering in their liberated territory. It's a horrifying blueprint.
It is, and the text presents the core lesson as being about understanding the real motivations of the population and the real vulnerabilities of the state.
Meaning not ideology, but comfort.
Exactly. The revolutionary leadership, as depicted, concluded that hitting political targets was less effective than hitting the economy, hitting people's sense of security and material well-being.
They weaponize complacency.
They seemed to believe they had to. They saw the public's desire for comfort not as a strength of the system, but as its critical vulnerability. They needed to make life so miserable that people couldn't afford to be complacent anymore.
Which brings us back to that initial cynical realization Turner had about the populace. That comfort and money mattered more than freedom.
And that assumption, right or wrong within the narrative, dictated their entire strategic evolution. They shifted from trying to inspire revolt to systematically creating the conditions for it through coercion and engineered chaos.
It's a chilling thought, that transition from asking, how do we win hearts and minds, to how do we make their lives unbearable?
And the text argues that pivot was necessary for their depicted success. It saved the organization, within this narrative, from failure.
Which leaves us, and you listening, with a pretty stark final thought, building on that insight from the diaries. If this fictional insurgency succeeded by attacking the public's comfort and economic stability, how much does a modern state's vulnerability depend not just on its military strength, but on its population's complacency and expectation of an easy life?
Is the real center of gravity for a movement aiming for radical change, not the government buildings or the military bases, but the public's deeply ingrained assumption of material security and predictable comfort. Something to think about.